Hmm. Myself, I am Gunakar, Assistant Professor of Zoology, Government Degree College, Siddipet, Telangana State. Today, let us discuss the excretory system in animals, Part 2. That is, in the last video, we have seen the excretory system in animals, Part 1, where we have discussed the structure of excretory organs in different animals and as well as their functioning. And in the case of kidney, we have seen the structure we have discussed up to the structure of nephron in the last video. So in this video, let us discuss the mechanism of urine formation, that is physiology of excretion. So in this video, we shall discuss the blood supply to kidneys, physiology of excretion, then mechanism of urine formation, and lastly the elimination of urine, that is the process is called micturition. Before going into details of mechanism of urine formation, let us have a look at the clear structure of the nephron. Here you can see the nephron, detailed structure of nephron. See, all the nephrons, almost all the nephrons are located at the junction of the cortex and medullary region of the kidney. This is cortex region up to here, and medullary region starts from here. So almost all nephrons are present at the junction. This is the junction of cortical region and medullary region, and these nephrons are situated at the junction, and the parts, that means especially the Malpighian corpuscle, which includes Bowman's capsule and glomerulus, then proximal convoluted tubule and distal convoluted tubule. These are the parts which are present in the cortical region or cortex of the kidney, whereas the Henle's loop and as well as collecting duct, these are the parts which are present in the medullary region of the kidney. Before getting into the mechanism of urine formation, let us have a look into the blood supply to the kidneys. In higher animals, that is in vertebrates, the nitrogenous wastes are collected by blood from the cells and carry it to the kidneys for filtration and then excretion later on. So the rate of blood flow through both the kidneys is 1200 ml per minute, and this blood is brought into the kidneys by a pair of renal arteries. We can look into the renal arteries here. So the red colored blood vessels you can see here, the blood with waste products, that is nitrogenous waste, are brought by these renal arteries, and these renal arteries supply the blood along with the waste products or nitrogenous waste into the kidney, and these waste products or nitrogenous wastes are filtered by the functional units of the kidney, which are called as the nephrons or uriniferous tubules, and these nephrons, they filter the nitrogenous waste products from the blood, and then remaining purified blood is again returned to the blood vessels through the renal veins. This is the clean blood, you can see now. So we have seen the blood is brought to the kidneys by a pair of renal arteries, and which break up in the kidney into renal arterioles and then capillaries. Then two capillary networks are also present supplying blood to the renal corpuscle. One is glomerulus and the other is peritubular capillaries. Just now in the previous figure we have seen peritubular capillary network. Here also we can see the peritubular network. Now here, so this is the glomerulus, and whereas the network of blood vessels, you can see here the network of blood vessels surrounding the nephron which is called peritubular network. And here the downwards, the peritubular network or the network is called as vasa recta. Here upper side peritubular network. With this knowledge, let us continue further. Now, mechanism of urine formation. The mechanism of urine formation, it is found out, or mostly the contribution in this mechanism of urine formation, especially the ultrafiltration or glomerular filtration, which is the first step in the mechanism of urine formation, is contributed by Ludwig Richards. So, in this mechanism of urine formation, there are mainly three processes. First one is ultrafiltration. First one is ultrafiltration, which is also called glomerular filtration. Second one, the selective reabsorption, which is also called tubular reabsorption. And number three, tubular secretion. So these are the three processes mainly involved in the mechanism of urine formation. So let us discuss this one by one. First of all, ultrafiltration or glomerular filtration, which is a passive process. Passive process means it is not consuming any energy. It is a passive process. But for this process to take place, there needs some pressure. So how this pressure is generated, let us discuss. As I said earlier, now we have seen in the when we see the structure of nephron also here. Now this is the afferent renal arteriole, which brings the blood into the Malpighian corpuscle. This is the Malpighian corpuscle, which is made up of the glomerulus, here the glomerulus, as well as Bowman's capsule. These two structures, they combinedly called as the Malpighian corpuscle. So into the Malpighian corpuscle, the blood vessel or the arteriole which brings the blood into the glomerulus is called as afferent renal arteriole. This blood contains nitrogenous waste, and this afferent renal arteriole, which is break up into the capillaries, here capillaries, which is the capillaries, and these capillaries of the afferent renal arterioles are connected to the capillaries of efferent renal arteriole, which carries the blood after filtration of these nitrogenous waste in the glomerulus. So the glomerulus is nothing but it is a network of capillaries of both the afferent renal arteriole as well as efferent renal arteriole. But here we need to observe one thing, is the capillaries of the afferent renal arteriole has much or more diameter when compared to the capillaries of the efferent renal arteriole. This we need to remember. So what happens when the diameter is different? When the diameter is different in both the capillaries, when from more diameter the blood passes to the less diameter, capillaries of the less diameter, the pressure increases. So this pressure is responsible for the filtration of nitrogenous waste. Here, what is this pressure? How the pressure develops? Let us discuss. First of all, we need to know what are the three pressures which are present, or three types of pressures found here. Here, the first pressure that is present is glomerular hydrostatic pressure. Glomerular hydrostatic pressure, just we will abbreviate it as the glomerular pressure GP, or glomerular hydrostatic pressure. That is in the blood which flows in the glomerulus, which exerts a pressure which is called glomerular hydrostatic pressure. The other pressure that operates here is the colloidal osmotic pressure of the blood. This is COP, colloidal osmotic pressure of the blood. Whereas this GP is the glomerulus hydrostatic pressure, whereas this COP is colloidal osmotic pressure, which is produced by the unfiltered plasma proteins of the blood. Then third pressure that is present here is tubular pressure. This tubular pressure can also be called as capsular hydrostatic pressure, which is present in the Bowman's capsule. That means this tubular pressure is exerted or produced by the fluid already occupying the Bowman's capsule and as well as renal tubule. So these are the three pressures that operate here for the ultrafiltration or glomerular filtration to take place. Now what happens is the glomerular hydrostatic pressure, which is equal to 60 mmHg, is opposed by the colloidal osmotic pressure and tubular pressure, which are 32 mmHg and 18 mmHg respectively. And that is 60, which is a glomerular pressure, is opposed by 50 mmHg, which is formed by the combined colloidal osmotic pressure of the blood and as well as the tubular pressure. So net pressure that is resultant is 10 millimeters of Hg, which is called as net filtration pressure, that is NFR or NFP, that is net filtration rate or net filtration pressure, which is equal to 10 millimeters hydrogenum, and this pressure is responsible for the filtration of the blood. This pressure only is responsible for the filtration of the blood in the Malpighian corpuscle. Now, in the, that means about 125 ml, see, total amount of glomerular filtrate formed in all the nephrons of both the kidneys is glomerular filtration rate or glomerular filtration rate, and this is equal to the 125 ml or 125 ml per minute, or it is 180 liters per day. So totally both the kidneys per day, that is in one day, that is in 24 hours, in normal adult male, they produce about 180 liters of urine. 180 liters of urine. But interesting to say is, about this, out of this 180 liters, only a normal adult male eliminates 1 to 2 liters of urine only. That is, remaining 178 liters or 178 plus liters is reabsorbed into the body, Out of this huge amount of this glomerular filtrate, only little amount of urine is passed away. Now the next step in this mechanism of urine formation is selective reabsorption. I already told you, out of this 180 liters per day in a normal male and 160 liters per day in normal female, the most of the, that means 99% of the glomerular filtrate is reabsorbed into the blood. Okay, after this reabsorption, only 1 to 2 liters of urine is eliminated outside. Then third process in this mechanism of urine formation is tubular secretion. Many substances are secreted by the tubule, that means the renal tubule. For example, urea, creatinine and potassium ions, hydrogen ions, etc. These are diffused into the renal tubule from the medullary interstitium, and so that whatever the urine that is passed out is not containing the products which are useful to the body, only unused or which are waste products only to be released outside. And this process or the elimination of ultimate urine, which is 4 times concentrated than the initial urine that is formed in the neck region of Bowman's capsule, is called as micturition. That is elimination of urine outside through the urinary bladder via urethra. Now let us see the selective reabsorption process. We have just now seen the ultrafiltration or glomerular filtration. Why it is called the ultrafiltration? Because the blood is filtered through the fine slit pores and fenestrations due to the pressure. If this pressure falls to the 50 mmHg, from the 60 mmHg to 50 mmHg, it is equal to the colloidal osmotic pressure and tubular pressure. So no filtration takes place when the pressure falls below 50 mmHg. Now coming to the selective reabsorption, which is also called as tubular reabsorption. Before that, what are the substances that are present in the glomerular filtrate? Let us discuss. Glomerular filtrate contains the molecules which are smaller than 3 nanometers, like water molecules, electrolytes, glucose, vitamins, some salts, etc. And in this glomerular filtrate, some of the essential substances which are very important for body are also present, like for example glucose, some of the amino acids, nitrogen and vitamins. And this process, that is second process in the mechanism of urine formation, which is called selective reabsorption, all these essential substances are reabsorbed from the filtrate, and only waste substances are passed out ultimately. The exchange of this material between the filtrate and peritubular blood takes place, and this selective reabsorption involves both passive and active transport processes. Now here you can see in this figure, you can see the structure, detailed structure of a nephron. You can see this is the glomerulus portion, and whereas from here these are the portion, this is the portion that is renal tubule, which is called renal tubule, except this red color portion. Whatever the yellow color portion that is present is part of a renal tubule, except this this one. So from here to here, except this red color portion, that means blood vessels, this yellow colored portion is called as the renal tubule, and this renal tubule has 3 main portions. What are the 3 main portions? Let us have a look. First portion this renal tubule is called as the PCT, that means proximal convoluted tubule, which is very much convoluted. Here let us have a look. Proximal convoluted tubule. This is the proximal convoluted tubule. Actually it is very much convoluted. In the first case, in the first figure, we have seen this proximal convoluted tubule. Why it is called proximal? Which is near to the Malpighian corpuscle, that is proximate to the proximal to the Bowman's capsule. And whereas this loop-like structure, which is called as loop of Henle or Henle's loop, after the discovery of after a scientist discovered Frederick Henle. And then next one, the last portion of this renal tubule is called as this one, which is called distal convoluted tubule. This distal convoluted tubule is less convoluted, that is less folded when compared to the proximal convoluted tubule, as it is away from the more away from the Bowman's capsule. That's why it is called as distal convoluted tubule. So what are the differences between this proximal convoluted tubule? Now here it onwards, now let us call it as PCT, proximal convoluted tubule, and distal convoluted tubule, now here onwards we call it as DCT. So what is the main difference between the PCT and DCT? Is PCT, this PCT is having the cells, that is the wall of the PCT are formed by the cuboidal epithelial cells, and which are having brush border, that is microvilli are present in the cuboidal cells. Whereas here in the DCT, whose wall is made up of the just cuboidal epithelial cells, but they are not having the microvilli, that is brush border is absent. That means here in the PCT, the reabsorption process is more when compared to the DCT. And one more thing is, in the PCT and Henle's loop, in the PCT and half portion of the Henle's loop, here the reabsorption takes place more rapidly, and whereas here in this ascending loop of Henle, the reabsorption takes place somewhat less, and whereas here the reabsorption of the essential substances from the glomerular filtrate takes place depend upon the condition of the body. Now let us discuss what is filtered from the glomerular filtrate. Just now I told you there are some essential substances are present in the glomerular filtrate that have to be reabsorbed into the body, which are essential for the body. Then here 65 to 80% of glomerular filtrate is absorbed in the PCT and as well as the descending limb of loop of Henle, which is called as obligatory reabsorption. This is mandatory. This reabsorption should take place. It is mandatory because the body needs these substances more, and that's why it is called obligatory reabsorption. And reabsorption of remaining fluid is regulated based on the necessity of the body. And total substances in the glomerular filtrate can be categorized into three types. First one is the high threshold substances, which are essential for body, hence efficiently reabsorbed. They are generally glucose, vitamins and some salts. Now low threshold substances, which are absorbed in little amounts, not that much amount, which are in high threshold substances are reabsorbed, but here only little amounts that low threshold substances are absorbed. Example, urea and uric acid. Why urea and uric acid are absorbed? Because for the maintenance of osmoregulation and internal homeostasis. And then A threshold substances, third type of substances are A threshold substances, which are actual excretory substances, and these are actually to be eliminated outside, and a best example is creatinine. Now just now I already said that the renal tubule is divided into three portions. One, proximal convoluted tubule, which is PCT short form, and then loop of Henle, and the DCT, distal convoluted tubule. These are the three parts which are present in the renal tubule. And in the proximal convoluted tubule, just now I told you, which is lined by cuboidal epithelium with brush border, reabsorption in this part, reabsorption of glucose takes place by active transport, and the sodium and potassium ions, calcium ions, vitamins and amino acids are also reabsorbed. And here about 75 to 80% of the water is also reabsorbed. 75 to 80% of water is also reabsorbed by the osmosis process. I told you this is an obligatory reabsorption or mandatory reabsorption, and it also some amounts of a little amount of urea and ammonia are also reabsorbed along with other substances. Then coming to the second part of the renal tubule, which is called loop of Henle, and this loop of Henle, sometimes called as Henle's loop, it consists of two limbs. One is descending limb and ascending limb. Descending means from upper portion to lower portion, and ascending limb means from lower portion to upper portion. So it will be looking like this. So here one more thing we need to understand is the descending limb is always of the equal diameter and equal thickness, whereas the ascending limb has two segments. One is with this is the ascending limb. First portion of the ascending limb is thin, whereas the second portion of the ascending limb, which is thicker. So this ascending limb is containing the thin segment, and half of it is thick segment. So ascending limb is containing two portions. We need to understand. Just now we have seen about 75% of water is reabsorbed through the proximal convoluted tubule, and among the remaining 25%, the 5% of water is reabsorbed from the descending limb, because here descending limb is permeable to water only, and descending limb is not permeable to sodium and other constituents. Only water is reabsorbed in small quantity. So as the glomerular filtrate passes downwards from PCT to the end of the loop of Henle, the concentration of the glomerular filtrate increases, because from the that means it becomes glomerular filtrate becomes hypertonic because water is reabsorbed and the solutes are not reabsorbed in the descending limb. So when the glomerular filtrate reaches up to the end of the loop of Henle, from here to here, then the concentration increases from about 300 milliosmoles per liter to 1200 milliosmoles per liter. That means how concentration increases, about 4 times the concentration increases. Now again, when in the ascending limb, just now I already told you, in the ascending limb, which has two segments, the thin part of the ascending limb and thick part of the ascending limb. Here water is in the ascending limb, water is impermeable. Which is impermeable? See here, ascending limb reabsorbs only sodium, potassium and chlorides, but it is impermeable to water. So as I said earlier, glomerular filtrate becomes more diluted than. So here, when from the downwards to the upwards, the glomerular filtrate becomes more diluted than plasma when it reaches the DCT. Now coming to the distal convoluted tubule. The distal convoluted tubule, along with the collecting duct, actively reabsorbs some sodium from filtrate and in exchange excretes some potassium in the urine. Here in this distal convoluted tubule, the remaining water, that is the whatever the water that is remained after the reabsorption of reabsorbed, that is in the PCT as well as the Henle's loop, is reabsorbed from the distal convoluted tubule into the interstitium based on the necessity, and this reabsorption is called as facultative reabsorption. That means based on the condition of the body, this absorption takes place. If water quantity is more here, then the more diluted urine is excreted. If water quantity is less in the body, then it has to absorb the water from the from the glomerular filtrate, because water is needed inside the body. That's why, depending upon the body condition, this reabsorption in the DCT may takes place, and this DCT also reabsorbs sodium chlorides and bicarbonate ions. And here the reabsorption of water is controlled by the ADH hormone of pituitary gland. Posterior pituitary gland secretes ADH, that is antidiuretic hormone, which is also called vasopressin hormone, and reabsorption of water in the distal convoluted tubule takes place by the action of antidiuretic hormone or ADH or vasopressin. So ADH controls all reabsorption of water in the case of distal convoluted tubule. That's why the selective reabsorption in the DCT is variable in nature depending upon the body's condition. Here we need to know one main thing. The kidney helps in osmoregulation by eliminating either hypotonic or hypertonic urine according to the need of the body. Now coming to the tubular secretion. What is tubular secretion? Tubular secretion is nothing but from the medullary interstitium or from the peritubular network, some substances diffuse into the renal tubule. That is called tubular secretion. Tubular secretion helps in addition of some substances to glomerular filtrate from the blood. Where is the blood present? The blood is present in the peritubular network and vasa recta, just now we have discussed and seen in the figure. And generally the secreted substances here are diffused substances from the blood into the tubule or renal tubule are uric acid, potassium and hydrogen ions. Some amount of ammonia, creatinine and hippuric acid are also released into or diffused from the interstitium into the renal tubule. Then we need to note one more thing also here about the water conservation. Kidneys not only eliminate these metabolic waste, nitrogenous metabolic waste, which are not at all useful for the body, but also prevents excessive loss of water. Because just now we have discussed in the case of DCT how the ADH controls when the water is less, when the water quantity is less in the body, then ADH secretes and then water is absorbed more from the glomerular filtrate, thus reinstating the water quantity in the body. Whereas when the water quantity is more in the body, diluted urine is passed away, and here this keeps the osmoregulation always in the normal or in the balance. And kidneys support the body fluid balance also, and the kidneys, that means glomerular filtrate flows in opposite direction in the two limbs of the Henle's loop, as well as two limbs of Henle's loop. Henle's loop and vasa recta form counter current systems. What is this counter current system? This counter current system or counter current multiplier theory was proposed by Wirz and Bray, and this counter current multiplier theory explains the formation of concentrated urine. Generally, just now we have seen here, again let us see the figure here. So closely observe here the figure. Now the flow of renal filtrate or glomerular filtrate in the two limbs of Henle's loop, that is in the descending limb and ascending limb. Here is the flow of the glomerular filtrate is in opposite directions and thus forms a counter current. Here in this descending limb the renal filtrate flows in this way, and ascending limb the renal filtrate flows in this way. That is, these two are in opposite direction. Okay, that is, these two, the flow of renal filtrate or glomerular filtrate is in counter current. Then again the blood, so just now we have seen this here, the blood vessels that are forming a network here surrounding the loop of Henle are called as vasa recta. In this vasa recta, some of the blood vessels the blood passes downwards, and some of the blood vessels the blood passes upwards. So here also in the vasa recta the blood forms one more counter current mechanism, counter current. So the presence of counter current of glomerular filtrate in the Henle's loop, as well as the presence of counter current of the blood in the vasa recta or in the peritubular network creates a counter current mechanism. Here, due to this counter current mechanism, always here the urine or the glomerular filtrate whose concentration increases from upper portion, or that from the PCT, always the concentration increases when it flows downwards and it decreases when it flows upwards. This counter current mechanism makes the osmoregulation or the maintenance of fluids in a balanced way. Here in the ascending portion, sodium chloride is passed away. Sodium chloride is passed away in the ascending limb of Henle's loop, and it enters the blood of the descending limb of vasa recta. Okay, so I'll repeat it once again. Counter current mechanism. The proximity between the Henle's loop and vasa recta, as well as the counter current of the renal fluid and blood in them, help in maintaining and increasing osmolarity towards the inner medullary interstitium. That is, just now we have earlier seen from the 300 milliosmoles, here the 300 milliosmoles to 1200 milliosmoles per liter. In the 300 milliosmoles are present in the cortical region, and medullary interstitium 1200 milliosmoles per liter is present. This gradient is mainly caused by sodium chloride and urea. This gradient, that is the difference in the concentration, is mainly caused by sodium chloride and urea. Sodium chloride passes out of the ascending limb of Henle's loop, and it enters the blood of descending limb of vasa recta. Sodium chloride is returned to the interstitium of the medulla from the ascending portion of the vasa recta. Similarly, small amounts of urea enter the thin segment of the ascending limb of Henle's loop, which is transported back to the interstitium from the collecting duct. From the collecting duct, it will be back into the interstitium. So this transport of substances, facilitated by special arrangement of Henle's loop and vasa recta, is called the counter current mechanism. That is, just now we have seen the two limbs of loop of Henle and as well as two limbs of vasa recta forms this counter current multiplier system. This mechanism helps to maintain a concentration gradient in the medullary interstitium, and human kidneys can produce urine nearly 4 times concentrated than the initial filtrate formed when the ultrafiltration takes place near the neck region of the Bowman's capsule. Now we can see in this figure, now here, so this renal corpuscle or Malpighian corpuscle is present in the junction of the cortex and medulla. Here in this medulla, this is the medullary portion. You can see here, this medullary portion contains the Henle's loop and all other pieces, Henle's loop. And again, now you can see the blood passes, and here due to the process of ultrafiltration, the glomerular filtrate is present here, and it produced here, and it passes downwards. So here, when it passes downwards, which is the almost isotonic, that means less concentrated glomerular filtrate, because it includes more amount of water. When it reaches here in the end of the Henle's loop downwards, the most of the water is reabsorbed here. That's why this here you can see we can see freely permeable to water. This portion from here to here, this portion is called as where freely permeable to water. Whereas this portion which is impermeable to water, but it is permeable to sodium and other solutes. And now this portion we have seen, which is called DCT and collecting duct. This is the collecting duct, and where this is called, this is water is, reabsorption is variable. Here you can see reabsorption is variably permeable membrane. Reabsorption is variably permeable to water. So here, but in the again collecting duct, some amount of water is reabsorbed, and only waste material will be ultimately formed. That's why from the initial filtrate to the final filtrate, the concentration increases 4 times. Now, route of urine flow, let us discuss. First of all, the blood passes, when the blood passes to the glomerulus, in the Bowman's capsule, the blood is filtered, and the filtrate or urine, filtrate you can say urine, which passes from the PCT, then to the Henle's loop, and then to the DCT, collecting duct, and from the collecting duct from each nephron joins with the papillary duct, and this papillary duct enters into the calyx region of the medulla, and from the calyx region it enters into the renal pelvis, and this renal pelvis, which is present at the concave portion of the kidney, through which it connected to the ureter, and from the ureter it enters into the urinary bladder, and through the urethra, which will be passed out. And this passing out, or the elimination of nitrogenous waste, that is urine from the body through the urethra from the urinary bladder, is called as micturition. That means when the urinary bladder is filled with the urine, and to certain extent urinary bladder, as the urinary bladder receives more and more urine from the collecting duct and papillary duct, that means ureters, then urinary bladder expands slowly, and the muscles, the muscles which are present in the urinary bladder, they initiate this contraction of the urinary bladder, and then from the urinary bladder the urine passes out through the urethra in the adult males, and which this passing out of the or elimination of the urine through the urethra is called as the micturition. Now let us discuss the particulars of human urine. There are different, the composition of the human urine is somewhat different, and here about 95% of water is present in the urine, and salts make up 2%, urea is only 2.6% of urea is present, uric acid is also present in very small quantities, 0.3%, and which are again there are traces of creatinine and ammonia are present. Then the color of the urine is pale yellow, that means pale yellow, that is because of the presence of urochrome pigment. Where this urochrome pigment is coming from? This here hemoglobin that is present in the blood will be degraded when it is degraded to bilirubins and biliverdins in the liver, Then the urochrome pigment is produced, and the urochrome pigment is joined with the this glomerular filtrate to form a urine, and that's why the urine gets the color. Then pH is 4.5 to 8.2. So on an average the 6 pH is maintained, and that's why it is mildly acidic, and specific gravity is 1.015 to 1.025, and odor and the smell is aromatic, which becomes ammonia like when it is standing, that is when it is deposited or something storage, then stored urine becomes ammonia like odor or smell. Then I already told you, though 180 liters of urine are filtered, glomerular filtrate is formed per day in the adult normal males, and 160 liters in the normal female per day. Only 1 to 2 liters per day is only eliminated, and this is variable to the conditions of the body. Thank you.